Thank you very much, Chris, for having us here at Situla. I'm delighted to welcome you to Etobicoke North. My name is Julie Lutete. I'm the Ontario Liberal candidate for this riding. Stephen understands very well the pain so many Ontarians are feeling right now. He is presenting bold solutions to these urgent problems. He is offering voters a choice in this election. A conservative government that will cut with chaos, only making the biggest and the richest richer, or a liberal government that will invest to make Ontario a place to grow. Please welcome the next Premier of Ontario, Stephen Del Duca.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Julie, for your introduction here today. It's great to be here in your riding at this incredible business, Situla, to see firsthand, first of all, the incredible craftsmanship that we had the chance to witness just a second ago with Raul and George and Chris, and to be invited in to have a conversation partially about the work that takes place here directly in terms of the products that are produced here for waterproofing, but also to understand that this, in fact, is a business. A successful business that's been in business for, I believe it's 27 years. And during the course of the COVID pandemic, here in this business, they made a decision to transition to a 4-day work week. And of course, you will all know that many months ago, I announced as part of the Economic Dignity Plan, or many weeks ago anyway, time has gotten away from us here, I did announce the Ontario Liberal Plan for Economic Dignity. If you think about the past few years in particular, as the nature of work has shifted and continues to be disrupted, and then you layer in on top of that the very difficult time that Ontario workers and their families have had during COVID, with so much at risk, so much vulnerability, so much precarious work, it is so critically important for me at a personal level, given my own family's story, and for the entire Ontario Liberal team, including Julie, to make sure that we have a plan that going forward will be fair, will be forward-looking. It is a fully costed plan, and it's a plan that will put workers and their families and our small business entrepreneurs right at the center of every single decision that we make. And that's why when we first release our Economic Dignity Plan, and what I'm here today to highlight, is that if elected in a few weeks on June 2nd, the new Ontario Liberal government will move forward with a demonstration project regarding the 4-day work week. Now, I said a second ago here at Situla, a private sector business, they have voluntarily made this transition already. We know that in different sectors, right across the province, for example, in parts of Northern Ontario, in the unionized construction sector, they have transitioned through their collective bargaining to 4-day work weeks quite some time ago. We see municipalities in Ontario like Zora that made the decision. I had the chance to visit Zora many months ago just outside of London, where they made a transition to a 4-day work week. And we know that in other places around the world, this has been examined. That is why we have made the commitment that we will launch a demonstration project to determine what kind of impact a 4-day work week would have in this province. Just like we have in so many other critically important areas, it is important for our Ontario Liberal Party, should we form government, to always be relying on the ability to make responsible and informed decisions. That's why we want the information back, to see how a 4-day work week might in fact do for workers and their families what they crave, what they want, which is the ability to once again have some kind of reasonable work-life balance. You know, think about this for just a quick moment. During COVID, I suspect many of you and many watching today constantly attached to your devices or your laptops or anything else related to the nature of work. What does that do for your own productivity, for your own mental health, for your ability or your freedom to spend time with your kids? This is why Ontario Liberals want to take a look at the 4-day work week as a possibility for this province, get the information back, bringing in the private sector, bringing in the academic world, bringing in those that have expertise as worker advocates, to make sure that we can capture the information that will help inform the decision that ultimately we make about how to deploy 4-day work week. The second thing I want to highlight today, again, as part of our economic dignity plan, is that an Ontario Liberal government will reinstate the basic income demonstration project that Doug Ford chose to callously cancel shortly after taking office in 2018. We know that despite the fact that he made the commitment that it would remain in place and be able to run its course, that again, he deliberately chose to cancel that pilot before it was completed. I will just say, not only was that a reckless and frankly unfair decision, I think to all of the programs that came out over the course of COVID, all of the different income support programs that were developed federally, and I wonder how much more on point and how much more would those have been, in a way, effective had the Government of Ontario allowed the basic income pilot to complete its work. All of that information would have been within the government's reach. It would have, I believe, helped inform a lot of the decisions that were forced upon us as a result of the pandemic. But sadly, Doug Ford chose to cancel that pilot, and therefore we collectively didn't have the information within our grasp. That's why an Ontario Liberal government will reinstate that pilot, again, like with the 4-day work week, to capture the information to make responsible and informed decisions about how we support workers, how we support the most vulnerable in society. I've also said in our plan for economic dignity that we will move the minimum wage up to $16 and then for the first time ever develop Ontario's first regionally adjusted living wage, which means that workers, the women and men like those here at Satura, who show up every single day of the week, every single day of the work week and do their jobs and work so hard in a dedicated way, that they'll be able to support themselves and their families, because fundamentally, Ontario Liberals believe that an honest day's work deserves a fair and honest day's pay. That is a fundamental principle of what motivates us. We will also restore paid sick leave and introduce a portable benefits package so workers who do not have comparable or a basic floor of support below their feet that they can stand on by way of workplace benefits will be able to access dental care, prescription medical care, prescription drug care, have a real path to retirement dignity. Mental health care is so critically important at this point in time. Taken together, these are steps that will help build our economy, not just for the wealthiest, not just for the big box stores and the giant corporations that the Ford Conservatives have consistently favored, but for everyday workers like the gentlemen and the women that we see here today at Satura, like small business entrepreneurs across this province. Workers and their families and our small business entrepreneurs deserve a government that is on their side every single step of the way. And in our Ontario Liberal plan for economic dignity, we will deliver this for them. Thank you very much, and be happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, so we've got reporters on the line and also on the ground today, so we're going to toss it over to reporters here. I just ask you if you can to come up to the mic so folks on the line can hear, and we'll start with Richard Southern.
Hello, Steve. It seems like there's a pro-worker theme going on here. Mr. Ford was spray painting in North York this morning. You're making roofing joints here in Etobicoke. Do you worry, though, that you've lost the worker vote to Mr. Ford? He got his 4th union endorsement today, sir.
Well, first of all, let me just be really clear. I don't have the technical skill to make the joints here. I believe that my friends George and Chris and Raul were the ones doing all the technical work. But look, I just wanted to be here today to, A, see the work that takes place here at Satura, and to recognize the craftsmanship and the quality of work that so many businesses across Etobicoke North and across this province do on a regular basis. I think when you look at our plan, you will see, and by the way, this is so important to me personally, given my own family's story. Many of you have heard me talk about my grandfather, who came here from Italy in 1951 and worked as a laborer on those underground sewer and water main projects that were brutally, brutally tough and dangerous and backbreaking. And in fact, he was injured on the job. When I talk about workplace benefits, when I talk about economic dignity, it is something that I speak to from a position of recognizing that economic dignity should never be based on a stroke of luck or good fortune. It needs to be there as a real floor of support beneath the feet of every single worker in this province, and that's what our plan will deliver. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to have the support of a lot of everyday workers across this province and every community. And as I always say, we will just keep working hard to continue to earn support and trust from now until June 2nd, and of course, beyond.
Usually, though, it would be yourself or maybe the NDP getting these union endorsements. Does it surprise you that the PCs have gotten 4, sir?
No, I'm not surprised. Look, the magic of democracy is that each of the parties puts out ideas and has a track record on which to run. So the leadership of the individual organized unions, or the unions that you've referenced or that have been referenced, I respect the decision that they're making. The good news is that the women and men who work as members of each of the industries impacted, I believe most, if not all are directly or indirectly related to construction, the individual members of those unions, they will make their decision like every other Ontarian come June 2nd when they cast their ballots. And I will just say, as someone who comes from a family directly of construction workers, whether it's my grandfather or my father who worked in construction management, or my mom who was a small business entrepreneur, I believe when the rank and file members of those unions and others take a look at what Ontario Liberals have in our plan for economic dignity, stacked up against Doug Ford, who canceled paid sick leave, who got rid of minimum wage increases, who undermined workers at every turn, and see Ms. Horvath, who's put forward a plan with no definitive costing, a plan that's already been updated and revised, I think 4 times in 3 weeks, they will recognize that the Ontario Liberal plan for economic dignity will in fact make their lives better, and they will cast their ballots accordingly.
One last one for me. Your campaign said today that the campaign has learned that the PC campaign will launch new negative attacks about you. I asked Ford about this today. He said he doesn't like to go negative. What have you learned that is coming, sir?
Oh, I haven't learned anything about what might be coming. I've just literally watched the past, well, it's been almost a full year since the first negative attacks were launched by both the Conservatives and the NDP against me. I said from the very beginning, I thought it was, I guess, an interesting tactic that they both chose to attack me at the same time, by the way, at the same time using the same tagline. I think that, you know, I say this all the time. I think the people of Ontario can draw their own conclusions about why they are both choosing to target me and the Ontario Liberal Party. That occurred during last night's leaders' debate. Look, I've said this from the very beginning. Both Mr. Ford and Ms. Horvath will, I suspect, continue to focus on me, continue to attack me personally. That is their choice. Ontario Liberals will remain exclusively focused on the people of this province who want the affordability crisis to be confronted and dealt with. They want an end to for-profit long-term care and a home care guarantee for the people of Ontario. They want Buck a Ride province-wide. They want smaller class sizes and that optional grade 13 to come back. They want our schools fixed, and those are the key elements of our plan to deliver for the people. That is what I and our team will remain exclusively focused on.
Hi, Stephen. I just wanted to follow up on Richard's first questions. Do you think that these endorsements for Ford, though, change the political labor landscape at all? You know, we saw the Labour Minister, Monty McNaughton, come out with just a ton of announcements throughout the government's second half, especially directed at workers. We saw an announcement in November with Smokey Thomas and Jerry Dias standing shoulder to shoulder with Doug Ford. You know, what would you tell sort of 2011, 2014 you about this and, you know, the days of the Working Families Coalition?
Well, look, I think the most important thing, and you hit the nail on the head, so to speak, was that the government in the last few months of a 4-year mandate decided to make a series of announcements and put out a series of press releases. But I think, as I tried to point out during the debate last evening, press releases don't equal progress. Words are empty if they're not backed up with real action. So while Mr. Ford and his team talk about benefits to workers that might flow in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, like the WSIB premiums, the overpayments that they are talking about theoretically flowing back to workers at some distant point in the future, I think their record on who they're for and who they're fighting for and what they're all about is crystal clear for the people of Ontario. We witnessed it all the way through this pandemic, siding with big box retail and giant corporations, determined to build a $10 billion highway, wasting people's money to help make some of their richest political donors even richer, at the same time as canceling minimum wage increases, getting rid of paid sick leave, letting our class sizes grow, doubling down on for-profit long-term care. I mean, the list goes on. They are a team that I think the people of Ontario recognize clearly is on the side of those who don't need the government's help, the biggest of the big, the wealthiest of the wealthy, the richest of the rich. Ontario Liberals, with our plan, we are on the side of workers and their families, as evidenced by the work that we will do starting on day one not waiting until the 4th year of a mandate to put out a series of press releases as some kind of belated conversion. That's not what's going to happen. Ontario Liberals, starting on day one, will deliver real economic dignity for workers, their families, and small business entrepreneurs.
You're speaking today about work-life balance. Would you continue with the Tories' plan on their right to disconnect policies?
Yeah, I would be happy to take a look at that. I have no problem. I think that fits nicely with the work that we are talking about relating to the work-life balance and the demonstration project around the four-day work week. I will just say, though, what I heard in those last couple of months of that flurry of announcements that they've made is a lot of, we need to study this, we need to kick the can further down the field. I don't think we can afford to wait. When I think about how the work-life balance is now being skewed to the point where people are burnt out, where anxiety and mental health challenges are off the charts, I think we need urgent action, not more kicking it down the field 2, 4, 6 years. That's why we will start the demonstration project quickly. That's why we'll do the same thing with basic income. That's why we'll start to build the portable benefits on day one. There's an urgent need for people to be healthy in every regard and have the kind of quality of life in this province that Ontarians deserve.
Just one more from
Sure.
me. You spoke, it sounded critically a moment ago of Andrea Horwath's revisions to her platform. But don't you think that her new plan to double ODSP rates and OW rates in the second year is a good thing? Wouldn't that afford workers more economic dignity?
So, look, in our plan, we have a significant increase to the ODSP, along with a series of other steps around the affordability crisis, all part of the Ontario Liberals' affordability pledge that I signed just yesterday, 19 key elements that will make life far easier and more affordable for every Ontarian, including those who receive ODSP or OW. What I find troubling about the way Ms. Horwath has so far conducted her campaign is that her platform came out 3.5 weeks ago. Now, I can certainly attest to how Ontario Liberals crafted our platform. We did listen over the last couple of years. We did a ton of outreach. I took a specific and personal interest in making sure, along with our co-chairs, that we had a platform that would both be compelling and relatable and make people's lives better. We put all of that work into it. I insisted that it be fully costed from day one. So there is a crystal clear plan, a roadmap that every single Ontarian can find at ontarioliberal.ca. We call it a place to grow. And you can hold us accountable for everything that we've committed to and the costing that's attached to those issues. And by the way, let me just say, as Premier, I will make sure that every single minister's mandate letter is public from day one. I won't be spending millions of your tax dollars to fight against transparency and openness within my government the way that Mr. Ford has. But I will just say, to see that over the course of now about 3.5 weeks that there have been 3 or 4 revisions already to the NDP platform, where the costing came very late in the day with mixed messages around what all of these elements mean. It's not so much that the intentions are good or bad. I just don't believe, after the last 4 years of cuts and chaos and havoc from Mr. Ford, that the people of Ontario can afford any more risks. And when a team puts out a platform and 3 weeks later has made multiple revisions and waited until the last second right before the leaders' debate on a Sunday afternoon to release their costing, I don't think it gives the people of Ontario confidence that they are up to the job of governing this province.
Okay, Stephen,
Hey,
thank you. Picking up on the debate last night as well, it looked to many observers that Mike Schreiner from the Green Party had quite a successful debate. I'm not saying you didn't, but
Thanks for throwing that in. Appreciate it.
Because everyone seemed to get a few good lines in. But do you think the way Mike punched above his weight last night could be harmful to you? And do you think a Green vote is a wasted vote?
Well, I guess my debate on my perspective on the debate last night is quite a bit different. I think people watching at home saw that there is a crystal clear choice in this election between Doug Ford consistently looking down, reading his notes, talking from a script clearly written by someone else, Doug Ford doing it that way, consistently wanting to hold Ontarians back, to hold this province down, trying to act like he's running the 2018 election all over again. I think they saw that on the one hand, and they saw the Ontario Liberal vision, the plan that we've put forward. They saw, I believe, me call out Mr. Ford on his appalling track record in publicly funded education, on the fact that he wants to prioritize private hospitals rather than the public healthcare system to deal with the surgical and diagnostic backlog. And then I think, and this was perhaps the most outrageous moment for me, I think that we saw Doug Ford engage in a bit of a personal pity party for himself when he complained, in essence, about how hard he's had to work over the past couple of years. That's why I chose in that moment to call it out, and to make sure people across Ontario understood what Doug Ford clearly doesn't understand, that that's the job we're running for. Showing up to be Premier when everything is sunshine and smiles, that's easy. But the job isn't supposed to always be easy. It is the responsibility and the obligation that every individual running for Premier has to make sure that they're ready to handle the good and sometimes the not so good times. I know the pandemic has been challenging, but given what Ontarians have gone through, lives lost, elder care being as disastrous as it was, small business owners who've lost their dreams, their livelihoods, the fact that Doug Ford seemed to want us to have sympathy for him last night, I thought was absolutely outrageous. That's why I chose to call that behavior out. To me, there's a really clear choice here in this election campaign. Dragged down, dragged backwards by the Ford Conservatives, or a place to grow, building a place to grow with the forward-looking and fair and fully costed Ontario Liberal plan.
So given that, how do you convince Ontarians that you are the progressive alternative? Because you've got to beat out Horvath and you've got to beat out Schreiner.
Well, look, I have a ton of faith in the people of Ontario. I think they saw last night, again, a very clear clash between myself and Mr. Ford about who has the better vision, who has the better team, who has the better energy about how we go forward, not just through the next 16 or 17 days, but how we go forward as a province over the next 4, 8, 12 years. How we make sure that we are bringing back an optional grade 13 and capping class sizes at 20 and fixing our schools, revolutionizing seniors care so people like my parents can stay at home for life and have the dignity that they've earned, have a real plan to confront the climate crisis by making sure we are a province that's net zero by 2050. All of this and more. Economic dignity that I've been here to talk about today for workers and their families. These are the elements, along with confronting the affordability crisis, that are right at the heart of our plan. So I have been campaigning for day one, and I'm having a ton of fun on the campaign trail, campaigning with our positive, forward-looking, and fair plan for this province. And I believe in hard work. I don't believe there are any shortcuts to success, so we're just going to keep working as hard as we can and put our faith in the people of Ontario.
What's your, just the last one, what's your one line to a voter at the door who says that the Liberal Party should stay in the penalty box?
Well, my line would be simple. Look at our plan, look at our team, look at the new energy that we have brought forward, and recognize above all else, I will never stop working to both earn and keep your trust, faith, and confidence in my ability and our team's ability to deliver for you.
Hey, Mr. Del Duca. It's,
Hey, morning.
Aidan Schmandy with Queen's Park Briefing. This one has a bit of a preamble, so apologies ahead for that. So it's on Noah Semple, the candidate. So he wrote several pieces above and beyond what you responded to last week in the early mid-2000s during his time at U of T. So one called Women's Only Gym Hours Discriminatory. Another muses about, quote, Charter of Rights and Duties, and mentions, quote, deadbeat parents owing over $1 billion in child support and, potentially requiring those people to only have kids they can support. Another talks about folks of, quote, sound mind and body choosing to go on welfare rather than work and contribute to the Canadian economy. And there's also one from December 2021 where he says an insurance company offering women a free hour of cancelling is discriminatory. You said last week you were reviewing his candidacy and the comments, and I'm wondering if this review has uncovered any of these writings so far.
Well, what I know is Mr. Semple is someone who has signed on to the Ontario Liberal team, understanding fully what's in our plan. He's an individual who supports the elements that you see in our plan. I'm again here today to talk about economic dignity. There are a series of measures in the Ontario Liberal plan that every single candidate is fully in support of that will deliver economic dignity, that will help make sure that we have public education that's properly supported, make sure that we can successfully confront the climate crisis, and the list goes on from there. Every single one of our candidates, including Mr. Semple, is fully in support of what we are determined to do starting on day one, which is to move this province forward and make sure that it is truly a place to grow, rather than what we've seen over the past 4 years, which is Mr. Ford dragging us backwards and dragging us down.
Okay, so I just quoted some, like directly quoted several things to you, and I know that there's a review underway, but considering the things that I just quoted to you, do you still stand by him as an OLP candidate?
Well, look, as I said a second ago, every one of the candidates who's running under our banner is strongly in support of what's in our platform. I think one of the most compelling things about our platform is that it's been out there now for many, many days for the people of Ontario to see. Some elements we started to announce late last year through the early part of this year. It's all there in black and white. We haven't had several revisions or updates in the span of just a couple of weeks, the way that the NDP have, and everything is fully costed. And I think in this day and age, it is so fundamentally important to make sure that people can hold you to account for the commitments that you make. And so when I say that our Ontario Liberal candidates are standing with every element of our platform, whether it's economic dignity, the fight against the climate crisis, cleaning up our environment, delivering for small business entrepreneurs, funding education properly, they've all signed on to this document recognizing, as I do, that this is our ironclad commitment to the people of Ontario. It's there for everyone to see at ontarioliberal.ca. It is fully costed. And should we earn the honor of governing this province in a couple of weeks, people across this province will be able to hold me and our team accountable for whether or not we deliver, but I know that we will.
Okay, so sorry, last one for me.
No
So
problem.
I think it was about 4 or 5 days ago that you said this review was underway. Do you have any expected delivery date for when this review will be done, and will it be made public?
Happy to have someone from the campaign team get back to you.
You mentioned the mandate letters. I asked
Yeah.
Mr. Ford today, if he does win again on June 2nd, will you make the new ones public?
And what was the answer?
He wouldn't answer that. He said, well,
What a
look
shock.
at June 2nd.
What a shock.
Why do you think he won't commit to that?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One is we all know, and everyone in Ontario knows, Doug Ford is not really strong on details, which I think is a bit of a scary concept for someone who served as Premier for 4 years. Secondly, I think he is probably exceedingly concerned, if not scared, about what was in those original mandate letters. I suspect ideas like letting class sizes grow, letting the repair backlog for schools grow, privatizing public education, privatizing healthcare. I suspect all of that and more is probably contained in those mandate letters. There is no other logical reason to explain why for 4 full years, Doug Ford and his team have wasted your tax dollars trying to suppress and keep secret those mandate letters. Surely they must know there is something in those documents that gives them a great deal of fear. I don't look at it that way. I think, again, this is why it was so important for me to have the platform out to make sure it was fully costed from day one. I think it's so important for people to know, yes, judge me, judge us for what we say we're going to do if we don't do it. But it's there for everyone to see it. That's why I have no concern whatsoever. And I'm happy to make the commitment again. If we form government June 2nd, every minister's mandate letter from the day that I take office as Premier until my last day in that office will always be openly and publicly shared and proudly shared, because Ontario Liberals have nothing to hide.
Okay, we've just got a couple more minutes. I'm going to toss it to Will on the line now for some questions.
No, we're just doing the media conference first. Okay, thank you.
Over to you, Will.
Okay, the first question on the line is Randy Combs from 93.1 The Border. Go ahead, Randy.
Hey, Randy.
Randy, you are on mute.
Still mute.
We can hear you now, Randy.
There we go. Yeah, so far away. Stephen, can you just elaborate a little more about the 4-day work week?
Yeah.
And it's already been studied by many, many different organizations, countries,
Yep.
cities. Why more study to try to implement this in Ontario?
Well, first of all, look, I think that we are, and you are correct, many places around the world have taken a look at it. We have companies like Satura, where I'm standing today, in Etobicoke North, that have already moved to this 4-day work week concept. I think that the provincial economy that we have in Ontario has a lot of unique circumstances and characteristics. We are a physically large province. We obviously have some large urban and suburban centers, but we also have rural and remote communities. And so I want to make sure that when we bring in the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, organized labor, municipalities, I mean, the list literally is large and comprehensive. I want everybody at the table so that we can make a fully informed and responsible decision about how this might impact Ontario's workforce. Will it be a good thing across all sectors? Should we make it voluntary? These are the questions that I have and that our team has that need to be tailor-made and specific to Ontario's economy, and that's why we will launch the 4-day workweek demonstration to get that information back so we can make a responsible and informed decision.
On a separate issue, prior to the last election, or even this election, there's a lot of talk about mergers and amalgamations regarding municipalities, health units, school boards, even hospital organizations. Where do you and the Liberals stand on some of those issues, and would you move forward with any of those things to try to save money?
Well, look, I think especially when you're talking about the municipal sector, Ontario Liberals are, and I personally am, really big believers in local decision-making. Obviously, the provincial government has a specific role to play and a big role to play to help support the 444 municipalities we have across Ontario. An Ontario Liberal government will do that in many different ways, which are all outlined in our platform, A Place to Grow. You can find all of that at ontarioliberal.ca. But I believe in local and regional decision-making. I believe in listening collaboratively to the advice that flows up from those who are closest to the ground, so to speak, in those communities, which, by the way, is the exact opposite of what we've seen from Doug Ford. Just think about this for a quick moment. He literally, within his first few months of taking office, decided to interfere in municipal elections, both in the City of Toronto and regional races in other parts of the province. Then, when he was challenged in court over it, he actually threatened to use the notwithstanding clause. At that point, the first premier to even really make that threat in Ontario's history. Of course, sadly, he chose later on to use that same notwithstanding clause on a different issue. We've seen him force minister zoning orders down the throats of local communities and municipal councils all over Ontario. That is a dangerous and reckless way to govern. But it's kind of typical of Doug Ford. I mean, he really is a his way or the highway kind of premier. And I guess I just look at leadership in a different way.
Okay, and that was your last question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.